So Peter Dutton recently was asked about a woke agenda in school. So let's listen.
What will the coalition do to tackle the woke agendas that are being pushed through our education system?
We do provide funding to the state governments, and we can condition that funding. And we should be saying to states, and we should be saying to those that are receiving that funding, that we want our kids to be taught the curriculum, and we want our kids to be taught what it is they're needed to take on as they face the challenges of the world, and not to be guided into some sort of an agenda that's come out of universities. And I think there's a lot of work to do, but that's the way in which the government can try and influence the New South Wales government or the Queensland government or the Victorian government, whatever it might be. And I think that's, again, a debate that we need to hear more from parents on. I think there is a silent majority on this issue right across the community. And when the government, at the start of this term of Parliament, tried to stop independent schools and religious schools from deciding on who they could employ or what they were going to teach at their school, I think there was an uprising then, not just from the religious leaders, but from parents as well, who pushed back on that. And I think that was, something that the government dropped fairly quickly thereafter because they knew they were going down the wrong path. But again, I think it's a big difference between the two parties.
How are you defining woke?
Well, I answered that question yesterday. I think the point that I see that's of interest as well is what we would do in relation to education funding and health funding. We are absolutely committed to health and education funding as the numbers appear in the budget papers. So before the Prime Minister goes off trying to scare people again, and that's what he's doing at the moment because he's trying to pick fights, he's trying to scare people, but he's, maybe good at that. I'll tell you what he's very bad at, that is helping families. Australian families.
Indoctrination was your word. Yeah. What topics are indoctrination that's in the curriculum?
Well, we've spoken before, and including yesterday in relation to it. I want young Australians who are going to school to get the best education they can. I don't want them indoctrinated according to the views of the lecturer at university or in relation to the views of the particular teacher. I want our kids to be taught according to community beliefs and standards, and I think that is the expectation of families. Not controversial here in the suburbs. It might be at the ABC, but not controversial here in the suburbs, and that's exactly what we're after.
Last night, a woman asked you about getting the woke agenda out of schools, and you spoke about potentially conditioning funding from schools to change their curriculums or to influence their curriculum. I think influence was the word that you used. Could I ask specifically what lessons or units you're concerned about having a woke agenda?
I want to make sure that our kids, whether they're at primary school or secondary school or indeed young Australians who are at universities, are receiving the education that their parents would expect them to receive. And our position will reflect community standards in relation to what is being taught at our schools and our universities. And you've seen some recent examples in relation to law school and the requirements being made. I think it was Macquarie University at the time. You've seen other academics who are out as part of protests on the streets and teachers similarly. That's being translated into the classroom. That's not something I support. I support young Australians being able to think freely, being able to assess what's before them and not being told and indoctrinated with something that is the agenda of others.
What is woke? So Peter Dutton couldn't answer this question, what is woke? It came from African American vernacular. It was meant to make the African American community aware of the social issues that affect Black communities. And so really staying woke from the original meaning of it is stay aware of social injustices, especially racism and police brutality. And it was then popularized during the Black Lives Matter protest movement. So then it was popularized then by that movement. But the original use of that woke was meant to be Black community, to be aware of the social issues that affect the Black community. So I'm saying that because a lot of identities are getting hijacked and used and then in a way that actually is not appropriate. So it's so important that you actually safeguard your own identity and the culture that you have, so you don't get other people to hijack your identity in order to either to capitalize on it or to weaponize it or to shield themselves from scrutiny. So that is the thing that you need to be aware of it and really reject the use of any cultural meaning stuff that people use that may be misused by others. As we can see that this time now it came from that community and now it's gone to mainstream and it's now been misused for what it was really meant to be. It was meant to be aware of social injustices like racism and inequity in our community. But now we know that it's often now refers to as a progressive social policies like DEI, gender rights, and climate justices. And it's also, and now it's often been used on the right side as a pejorative term, like it's used as a pejorative term to mock or reject what is seen as extreme political correctness and or identity politics. It means to focus on ideology over practical concerns. So this is what the terms comes from. So we're going to talk about why I'm defining this term, because the reason why I'm defining this because Peter Dutton was asked about it, and like many people who use this term, he failed to define it when he was asked, what is it? Okay, so and in this video, we're going to talk about him, why people have dumped him, the left side of the political aisle have dumped him as Temu Trump. So we're going to explore that. So that type, why they would frame him as a Temu Trump. So now let's have a look at his understanding of the woke from the past videos that he's uttered and past comment as well. And we can start with Trump as well. Trump is so obvious. He's framed the woke ideology, now targeting school, university, now arresting people based on your social media posting and what they like and hate it. That is around him attacking that so-called woke agenda, and claims to be anti-American and anti-merit or undermine parental rights, and mainly around school issues, and has recently amended the school and did this amendment of the school himself, executive order. It wasn't just a law, it was just an executive order, about what he wants in school. It wasn't a policy that was so it almost like in America right now, the Congress and the Senate aren't doing anything. Trump is doing work on their behalf, but he's done this executive order about this woke agenda in school. This woke agenda, according to Trump, he's framed it as undermining parental rights and pushing for patriotic education, and also framing it as anti-American. So let's look at Peter Dutton's framing of the woke from the past, what he said around this. And so he often criticize woke elements in government like school and businesses, and opposes policies like voice, DI programs, and also says woke focus on issues that aren't really issues. They distract from real issues, and also real issues like housing and crime. So in business, why is matter in business? So in business, these type of thoughts and ideology, you need to understand it from the branding perspective, and for human resources, and from public perception. Okay, you must balance the those inclusive values with stakeholder expectation. You also need to be prepared for anti-war backlash, or also for a support depending on the audience that the business is targeting. So that's what it's so important. That's why I'm talking about it, because it may impact on a lot of you and your business as well. Okay. So now that we've described that, the woke agenda. So the woke agenda on the left side of the political aisle, being woke may still mean that being informed and fighting injustice. On the right side of the political aisle, the woke may still be used as a pejorative, as a to mock people, to describe what they see as overreach by social movements, or as a radical or ideology in school, media, or corporation. So this is what you need to be aware of that. So now let's compare. Donald Trump frames woke ideology as threat to American values, merits, and parental rights. He accuses schools, corporation, and even military of pushing radical identity politics. His policies target DEI programs and gender ideology as a form of ideological indoctrination. That is similar to Peter Dutton as well, that statement. So Dutton has described parts of the public services like university, large companies as infected with woke nonsense. He also criticizes programs like The Voice to Parliament, claiming they're driven by symbolism instead of practical outcomes. He often uses woke to tap into voters' frustration about the cost of living, crimes, and housing, suggesting that governments are too focused on ideology and not enough on everyday concerns. So you can see that around framing around this housing policy, while both of them don't have any idea about how to solve the housing, despite being advised by economists that the issue is actually around the supply. It's not about what they're doing. The policy that they're putting in place are going to inflate the prices and make it even harder for people to get houses. But, they continue to do that because, what? Over 80% of them own multiple properties, are invested in this Ponzi property scheme. So, yes, so it's still an issue around also migration as well, because we know that, if you've got more demand, you've got higher amount of people coming in, but we haven't got enough supply of those houses. So what a government has control on, how many people they get into the country, and also about regulation and allowing more houses to be built. But the policies that they've suggested so far, they're reckless policies. Okay, if any policies that the government brings today that doesn't actually deal with the supply issue, it's a Dululu policy. Okay, Dululu, not going to help anyway. So for business leaders, if you own a business like I do, you need to really be careful about how you navigate this public relation. So be mindful of how policies may be framed by the people or client and people that you are servicing, and also by a workplace culture as well. You must balance the inclusive practices and also with your organizational goals. So you also have to pay attention to the stakeholder management. So you also anticipate the reaction from different groups based on their views of what they deem as woke issue. So that's quite important to be aware of. So
thank you guys for listening. There is part 2 of Peter Dutton, Temu, Trump.
And Dutton-Trump part 2, we're going to talk about his very controversial stance and policies that it's about to haunt him. And it's relevant to you, Mzansi community, expat South Africans. Thank you guys for listening. If you're new, please consider subscribing. Until next time, see ya. Bye.